Is it weird that I love movies that are basically lying to me and trying to trick me into thinking they're real? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it's going to give you a pretty good description of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. But in short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is our Doctorate Level series. This is where we revisit a subgenre that we've already talked about before, give a quick recap for people who didn't see it of what we did talk about, and then pick a new 4th Doctorate Level selection. Something that is either a little bit less mainstream or just got passed over in the previous horror movie syllabus, something new to talk about, to revisit the subgenres because, well, frankly, we like talking about them so much. And a subgenre that I like talking about that we talked about last time is the mockumentary subgenre. The mockumentary subgenre is sort of a favorite of mine. I tend to really enjoy these films quite a bit. I talked about that in the previous video. I also talked about the difference between a mockumentary and a found footage film because there's a lot of overlap between the two. They tend to kind of live and exist in the same space, and there's some minor differences. Basically, the mockumentary is focusing more on the fake documentary aspect of it, which is what a mockumentary is, and we explained that in the video. And then the found footage is looking more at the actual footage that was found, but a lot of times a mockumentary will contain found footage, and a found footage movie will have a bit of a mockumentary aspect to it, so there's a lot of overlap. And I tend to like both very much, but the mockumentary one really tends to be more for me. I tend to buy into it and enjoy how they try to, buy into it, I don't fall for it, I know it's a mockumentary, but I tend to enjoy how they're trying to make it seem real, how they're trying to sell people on the fact that it is actually a true story. And I know that these can be divisive. Found footage in particular is very divisive. A lot of people hate found footage. But there are people who dislike mockumentaries too because of the same thing. It seems like if they actually get tricked by it, they hate it. They get mad about it. I think people just don't like to be tricked, People don't like to be had. And if they know it's a mockumentary, they're a little bit more willing to go along with it. Although some people just don't like them very much. I tend to like them very much. We've talked about quite a bit of them, not just in the mockumentary video, but going forward in a lot of other areas too. A lot of recommendations have been sent to me that have been mockumentaries, and I've enjoyed them quite a bit. So this is a subgenre that I'm happy to revisit. And we're going to go ahead and start our revisit by looking at the movies we talked about in the previous video. We're going to start that recap right now. The first mockumentary horror movie that we talked about was The Fourth Kind. And we talked about how The Fourth Kind is pretty popular, at least with a certain group of people. And I think those people are people who believe in alien abductions. If you buy into that, I think you really tend to like this movie because it's doing a good job of trying to make it feel very, very real. And I think that is scary to people who believe in this, right? And the way they make it feel real is by having it set up so that there is a recreation aspect to this and then ostensibly real footage, right? So you have supposedly actors portraying these characters that had real events happen to them. And then they have footage of these real events, except that the real events are also actors, right? But they do it in such a way that it really starts to suspend the disbelief. It really starts to make it seem real. It does actually have that kind of verisimilitude. And then on top of that, they filmed it in an area where there are a lot of missing people, and they incorporated that into the movies. Kind of controversially, that they incorporated that there because it may be arguably a little insensitive or whatever, but it does add another layer of reality to this that makes this movie feel very clever, sells the premise, the concept really, really well. And that's what makes me like it a lot, is that I think they do a really good job of selling the premise, and I think that's what makes it a really noteworthy movie. In the next mockumentary horror movie we talked about was The Last Broadcast. And we talked about that in light of the Blair Witch Project, or the famous found footage movie. And we had to because Blair Witch often gets all the shine, even though The Last Broadcast came out a year before that, and therefore has a little bit more of a stake of the claim to who started this kind of movement. And it is very similar in a lot of ways. It's more of a documentary, whereas Blair Witch is really more found footage. It really highlights that distinction that I drew between the two subgenres. And this one is really more documentary, but I really like it, and it's even lower budget than Blair Witch, so it's a pretty neat success story. Except that it didn't have anywhere near the success of Blair Witch. In fact, it's very hard to find now. We talked about that too, but we also talked about the controversial ending, and I'm obviously not going to spoil it, but the ending is either you'll really enjoy it or you really don't, and it kind of throws like a bit of a, not even a twist, just it just changes the entire movie when you see it, and it's a bold move, and it makes it for a very memorable movie, which is unfortunately otherwise kind of forgotten because, again, it predates Blair Witch by about a year, and it really has a lot of the same themes and same stuff being explored, but doesn't get nearly the same kind of love, and it deserves more love than it got. And the last mockumentary horror movie that we picked for the horror movie syllabus was the Poughkeepsie tapes. And we talked about the Poughkeepsie tapes, which is pretty notorious for being really rough of a watch, very disturbing, unsettling content in the movie. And it took a long time to get this movie released too. Like, it sat on the shelf for a while. It got some weird limited releases, some festival releases. It was a little hard to find on physical media for a while. So we spent some time talking about how it was hard to get. I had a bootleg copy that I had watched actually, and the reason why is because of the content and how rough it is, and it's notorious for that. It really is, and it makes for a difficult watch and makes for some really disturbing stuff. But it also gives it that reputation, right? This movie is really well known for being a little disturbingly realistic. Like, if you're a fan of true crime type stuff, true crime documentaries, stuff like that, this one's going to be very familiar to you. It's going to scratch that itch. It's going to feel very, very much like what you're used to seeing, and therefore feeling very, very realistic. And you're going to see some really dark, disturbing stuff. That's what I think makes it so effective. That's what I think gives it its reputation and why it's kind of talked about and buzzed about like it is. And that's what makes me like it, frankly. And I know it's a little weird to like it. It's so dark and disturbing, but I do really like that movie quite a bit. So I talked about that in the video too. It's just a weird one to admit to liking, but I do, because it's just a really, really well done movie that works for me quite a bit. So those are the movies that we looked at on the previous video. Now let's get into a new fourth doctorate level selection. Our doctorate level selection for the mockumentary horror subgenre is Ghostwatch. Ghostwatch came out in 1992 and is pretty famous and notorious and important in mockumentary horror history. And I would have sworn to you that we had already talked about it on the horror movie syllabus. I would have been convinced that we did. But when I started going through my records, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't find it. I was shocked that I hadn't already talked about it. And there's no excuse for that, frankly, but we're making up for it now with this doctorate level selection, because this one really does have to be recognized in this subgenre for sure. Now, if you haven't seen it before, Ghostwatch is actually a made-for-TV movie that was aired on the BBC in the UK. I think I was on Halloween. That was supposed to be like a live show, a live news broadcast where they explored a haunted house. Of course, it's actually pre-recorded, and it's actually a mockumentary, but they used real live broadcasters and told the public that it was a real live investigation into this family that was being haunted by some sort of spirit or ghost or whatever in their house. And it was wild as the hijinks abounded. And I'm going to stop there so as to not spoil the movie for you, but we are going to get into the history of this movie a little bit, because that is the most noteworthy thing about this. So this movie comes out in 1992, and like I said, it's being portrayed as if it's being aired live, and they're using actual real broadcasters. Michael Parkinson is like the main anchorman who's kind of narrating and the master of ceremonies for this special that's being aired on Halloween, this Ghostwatch special. And he's a real broadcaster. I'm not from the UK, so I don't know who he is, but the research will tell you he's a real broadcaster. He's trusted, so people are believing this. And a lot of the other characters in this are actual real broadcasters as well. The most notable one being Sarah Green, who's like the on-site reporter who's actually in the house with the family, and she's apparently like not so much a broadcaster, she's like a host of a children's show or something like that. But again, a noted personality playing herself and acting like everything's real. And they've peppered the entire production with these people. So it's giving it a sense of verisimilitude right off the bat. Authenticity, right? People believe what they're being told. Now, they did actually tell people it was fake, but they did a pretty good job of minimizing that, and that's important for later. But they were going for kind of a War of the Worlds type thing, right? The Orson Welles 1930s War of the Worlds radio drama, where he was basically convincing everybody that the world was being invaded by aliens, and people actually bought into it and lost their damn minds. That's what they were going for. And frankly, they nailed it. They nailed it by having a pretty simple, believable, and familiar concept, right? A family that's getting haunted by some sort of evil ghost or spirit or whatever, and they're modeling it. The inspiration is the Enfield poltergeist, which is a very famous ghost case in the UK. And if you're a fan of the Conjuring series, Conjuring 2 was based on the Enfield poltergeist. So you might be familiar with it from that. It's pretty famous, pretty well known. And honestly, the audience would probably know about that. So the similarities might have been obvious, but it's also, the familiarity makes it feel more real, right? Because you're seeing familiar faces on TV and you're seeing a familiar feeling story, you're starting to buy into this. And even though as the story goes on, the explanation for what's going on gets a little convoluted. There's a lot of exposition. They have this whole thing where they have a parapsychologist who's on the show, who's also kind of working with Michael Parkinson, and she's helping take phone calls from people sharing their paranormal experiences and stuff like that. So there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of exposition, a lot of telling what's happening rather than showing what's happening. But that actually kind of works for what they're doing, because when you do see something, it's noteworthy, it's surprising. Think like Paranormal Activity, like a lot of nothing happened and then something happens off in the corner and you're like, oh, what is that? And again, if you're trying to make the audience believe that this is real, you have to be subtle about it. You can't just be like, oh, there's a ghost, right? It has to be kind of believable and have it be kind of sneaky and hard to spot and surprising. And they nailed this. They actually do this really, really well. And the production values are dead on in this, right? It looks like a news broadcast. It's kind of not super high budget. People are kind of loose and whatever, and you can see the cameramen and stuff like that, and you're supposed to, because it makes it feel realistic, right? It makes it feel like there is a truth to this, that you're seeing something actually happening, even though it's been pre-recorded. You don't know that it's been pre-recorded. And it was pretty effective, because people like the War of the Worlds, they lost their damn minds. The BBC was inundated with calls and complaints about this. Kids being freaked out, having PTSD, believing it was real. Somebody sued because they had a special needs son who was, an adult but had the mentality of a child, who killed himself. And the thought process was that this movie had sparked something in him because he heard noises, and it was like the noises in the movie, and it kind of freaked him out and stuff like that. So a lot of controversy about this. They really kind of stepped in it pretty bad. And, it's kind of tough because they're sitting there saying, look, this should have obviously been not real, but if we try to make it too obvious that it wasn't real, it kind of kills the whole point, which is to make people feel like it's real, to be spooky and scary. And it's like they did their job a little too well, which when you watch it in retrospect is a little surprising, because I'll be honest, like, it's not as effective today as it would have been in 1992, like 30 plus years ago. The acting in particular is a little forced for many of the actors. Like, I think Sarah Green, the reporter, is actually pretty good, and Michael Parkinson's solid too. But like the actors playing the family being terrorized are unrealistic to me. I think they're very kind of theatrical and big. They feel very much like they're putting on a performance, right? It feels staged, like a performance. Now, you could, if you know the Enfield poltergeist story, figure that's maybe by design, because the Enfield poltergeist was a hoax, and maybe this is supposed to be a hoax too, and they kind of play with that a little bit. But the way the movie goes, you're supposed to buy into this, that they're real, and they don't feel super real. And we've seen mockumentaries since this, ad nauseum, right? But at the time this comes out, that's not a common thing. So it was easier to sell it then than it is now. So you watch it now, it comes off more quaint than scary, really. There's some cool scenes in there. There's some stuff that's really effective, but really you have to kind of put yourself in the mindset of like, wow, this must have really blown their minds back then, but it doesn't really blow your mind now. It's cute. It's fun. And I do like it, but it's really more noteworthy for the reputation it had in terms of the havoc it caused in the public. As a movie on its own, it's fine. It's not as good as something like, say, Lake Mungo, right? It's not gonna hit you like that, or something like Savage Land, not even close. But it's important, and it's important in part of what it started and also what it accomplished in terms of tricking people. Like I said earlier, the mockumentaries that are really believable are the ones I like the most. Ghostwatch is one of the most believable ones because of the way they told it. Even though you can see the seams now, it doesn't really diminish what it is and what it's done. Very important, very noteworthy for this subgenre. Had to talk about it. And I'm assuming many of you have seen it. It's pretty famous, pretty well known. And let me know in the comments if you agree with me, if you think that it's maybe a little dated for what it is now, but it still holds up as a pretty impressive feat. Or if you have other thoughts on it, share them in the comments below. And if you haven't seen Ghostwatch, it is worth your time. If you like mockumentaries, you should see this one. It's a pretty great one to see for its historical relevance and just to see how well they did it. Well, frankly, it's really well done. So that's our pick for the doctorate level selection for the mockumentary horror subgenre. But of course, I've got an extra credit selection for you as well, because you know me, I'm not going to leave you with just one pick. And this movie is something that I feel like maybe we should just talk about here on the channel, because it's got some notoriety behind it. It seems like it gets a lot of buzz, and maybe it was worth some time to talk about it as an extra credit. And that movie is Antrum. Now, Antrum came out in 2018, and it's also known as Antrum, the deadliest film ever made. And that's some hyperbole, and it's a bold claim, and that's honestly the crux of why I want to talk about it, because the hype around this, the selling of that as the deadliest film ever made, and the kind of the mystique around that is what makes this movie noteworthy, and what makes it have people talking about it for better and for worse. But we're going to get into all of that in just a second. First, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is a mockumentary exploring the legend around this cursed film that when it's screened, people tend to die. There's breakouts, there's a fire that breaks out in a theater, there's mass deaths in the theater, there's all this crazy stuff happens when this movie is screened. This movie is this weird story about a boy and his sister going out to the woods to try to do an occult ritual to make sure that his dead dog does not go to hell and actually goes to heaven and release its soul. And hijinks abound in the movie, and hijinks abound in the mockumentary. We're going to go ahead and stop there so as not to spoil it too much. And the movie is interesting because of this angle, right? A mockumentary with a film inside the mockumentary. It's a really neat idea. And the film is ostensibly shot in the 1970s. Now, again, it's not, right? This is mock, right? But it looks good, right? The 70s feel with the grainy film and stuff like that looks pretty good. It's shot a little too well for a 70s film, but it looks good. It's believable enough, and it's charming enough that you buy into the aspect of this film being a film from the 70s that got made. And then they've built it, they've bookended it with mockumentary parts at the beginning and the end, explaining the whole history, the notoriety of this film, and how it's cursed and people die when they see it. And they're really selling it out as this is literally the dangerous thing to watch. Honestly, it has this kind of feel of like The Ring, right? With the video that you watch and you die in 7 days, and then they show you that video in the movie. In this case, they're telling you this mockumentary about this film that is so dangerous, and you watch it and it causes people to die, and then they show you the entire film, right? So you've got this meta aspect of like, oh, I'm about to watch this thing that when people watch it, they wind up dying, and now I'm about to watch it. And you know it's not really true, but it's a great hook, right? It's a great sell. It's a great idea to kind of draw you in. It's a really cool setup. This idea that you're watching something kind of taboo, kind of freakish and disturbing and dangerous, like the deadliest film ever made, right? Something dangerous that's risky for you to even be watching it is a great hook. It's a wonderful way to hype this movie up. And it doesn't quite live up to it, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of Antrum, and the reason why is because of the film itself. Like I said, it looks good. It's a cool idea, right? This kid's dog has died because I think it bit him or something like that, and like his mom makes a snide comment about how the dog's gonna go to hell because it was a bad dog. He's beside himself about this, so his sister theoretically nicely tries to take him to the woods to do like a spell that will make sure that the dog's soul gets released and goes to heaven. But in reality, she's kind of messing with him. It's just a fake spell book that she's created. And then what happens is things start happening for real. Occult stuff, supernatural stuff starts happening for real. Again, I'm not trying to spoil this, but this whole thing is cool. I like the occult setup. The themes for the occult stuff is working. That story idea of the fake book and then how things start really happening in real life is cool. But there's all this random stuff that happens. There's a guy committing suicide out there. There's these cannibals. There's all this weird, crazy stuff happening in there. The craziness kind of theoretically should work because you've got this notoriously wicked, evil, cursed film, and you want to have this really bizarre stuff in there. But it really starts to feel like this mishmash of ideas. Like at one point, the movie's literally splicing in scenes from a different movie, like a supposed snuff film, being spliced into this movie. And the idea behind it in the mockumentary is that this film has literally changed hands throughout the years, and people have modified it and messed with it a little bit. So there's this stuff in there that's cut in and spliced in and stuff like that. So, but it winds up being kind of jarring. It's supposed to be creepy, right? It's supposed to add an extra creep factor. Like you see these almost subliminal images of like snuff going on in there. And it's fake, right? But it's supposed to be creepy. But to me, it just winds up kind of being jarring. It feels like you're stuffing too much stuff in here. You're trying too hard. There's too many bizarre ideas and images being thrown into this movie, and it's kind of losing the thread, and it's messy, right? It's a little bit stuffed, and it's a problem because the movie's already a little bit slow. It's a little too long, and it's not scary enough. There are some cool, scary stuff in this movie. There's some stuff that really works for me in this, but it feels almost a little too, like, not enough, right? Not enough for the deadliest film ever made, and that's where I'm going with this. Is like, as a movie on its own merits, it's fine. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of cool. I enjoy it. It's fine. The hype is where it gets hurt. Like, the hype's the best part of this movie, and it's also the worst part of this movie because you're expecting the movie to be disturbing. Like, when you see The Ring and you see the video, it's kind of unsettling and disturbing, right? Like, I don't think you're thinking, oh, I'm scared now, right? The idea that you're scared is because you think you're going to die in 7 days. But like, when you see the images, they're unsettling. And in Antrim, I wanted that too. And I'll be honest, there is some parts to this that is there, and I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but there's, like, towards the end, in the credits and stuff like that, some explanations of the film that makes it feel a little bit more creepier, and I kind of wish they did a better job of carrying that throughout the entire film. I wanted to be unsettled by Antrim, the film within the mockumentary, and for the most part, I wasn't. I was entertained by it. There's some creepy, funny, ridiculous stuff going on in there, and the concept's pretty cool. I do like what they've set up there, but ultimately, they've got some really great marketing around this that works in terms of getting the notoriety up, but it winds up falling short for me. It has a lot of potential to be really, really cool, but it just falls a little bit short. And I might be in the minority in this because it's got a lot of positive word of mouth and a positive critical reviews. People seem to like this, but I do know a lot of people who kind of feel the way I do, that it's kind of overblown, overrated, not as amazing as the reputation would have it be. And I think it's because the reputation's more about the phenomenon, the hype, the selling point of it being a cursed film, rather than the actual content. The actual content, I think you'll go in a little disappointed. Unless you've had somebody like me tell you, manage your expectations, then you might be pleasantly surprised. Like I said, it's well done. I think that the acting's pretty good. I think that the filmmaking's quite good. I think the mockumentary bookends work really, really well. The concept is great. I just feel like the actual film itself, Antrim, isn't scary enough. It isn't unsettling enough. It doesn't creep me out enough like so many other mockumentaries. Like when you see the footage of the stuff in Lake Mungo, and I keep bringing that one up for reasons because it's good, I felt creeped out by that. Nothing in Antrim ever makes me feel creeped out. I feel like I'm just watching a horror movie like any other horror movie, like an old 70s horror movie. It's good, but it's not great. It needed to be great to live up to the hype. So that's my issue with it. But it's my issue. It's my nitpick about this. Overall, people do really seem to buy this, or at least it's got enough of a reputation as something really interesting that, again, I think is maybe a little unwarranted, but wanted to talk about it because a lot of people do talk about it. It does get brought up a lot. If you look up a mockumentary, best of horror mockumentary movies, then you'll see this come up a lot on the list. And I don't know that it warrants it personally, but I understand why it's there. Because I think in concept, this was a great idea. I think in execution, it fell a little short. That's my opinion on it. I'm assuming you guys have some opinions on it too. Let me know in the comments below if you think that I'm being too harsh on it or not harsh enough on it. Maybe you disliked the movie. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. But if you haven't seen it, yeah, it's worth checking out. I just, again, manage your expectations because I don't think it's going to be the deadliest film ever made. It's definitely not going to scare you as much as you would think it would from a title like that. So that's going to do it for our revisiting of the mockumentary horror subgenre. Like I said, Ghost Watch, can't believe I didn't talk about it previously. Antrim, wasn't going to talk about it, but kind of felt like I kept seeing videos about it and stuff like that. So I felt like, I might as well give my 2 cents on it as well. But both movies are worth your time. Manage your expectation on both of them, though. That's my thought process on that. And now my thought process is it's time to look at a Horror Trivia Pursuit card. It's that time of the video where I'm going to read a Horror Trivia Pursuit card live on camera. Don't know what the question is. Hopefully going to get it right so I don't look like an idiot. But you never know. And so let's see, we're talking about a mockumentary, so let's go with the psychological category in the card. That's probably the closest thing to the mockumentaries that we've talked about here. So here's our question for today. What writer-director team made both 1990's Misery and 1987's The Princess Bride? This is interesting. We've talked about Misery on the channel. We haven't talked about Princess Bride because it's not a horror film, but it's a great film. I actually love Princess Bride. And many, many people do, especially people my age. And I know who the director for both those movies is. I know very easily, very well, 100% know that. The writer-director team is throwing me off on this one because I didn't know there was a writer-director team. I didn't know that the same writer wrote both of those movies. That's kind of weird to me. In fact, I am under the impression that the person who wrote Princess Bride, also the screenplay, also wrote the book, The Princess Bride, that the movie is based on. That is what I'm under the impression, but now I'm not so sure I'm right about that. And I don't remember that name. I don't remember the name at all. And Misery is based on a book by Stephen King. But I know Stephen King did not write the script for Misery. So I know that's not Stephen King, right? And he didn't write Princess Bride anyways. But I don't know who the writer is. Like I said, so this is a two compound question. There's two names they're looking for. And I only know one of them. And I don't know who the other one is at all. Like, I have no clue on this one. So I'm trying to think of like other writers that I know that this director has worked with. And so that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to make a guess because I don't know the answer. I'm not going to prattle on here forever. You guys, lock in your answers, I think, because I've prattled on long enough here. Okay. So I'm going to give my answer. My answer is the director is definitely Rob Reiner. And my guess for the writer is Aaron Sorkin, but I'll be shocked if he wrote either of these movies. I'm only saying Aaron Sorkin because I know that Rob Reiner's worked with him in other movies. So I don't think that's going to be right. So let's take a look at the card. Card says Rob Reiner and William Goldman, respectively. William Goldman. And when I hear the name, it clicks for me. That rings a bell that is the writer of Princess Bride. I would not have guessed that he was the writer of Misery as well. I wouldn't have gotten that at all, but I know the name. So yeah, I'm wrong on that one. And yeah, I was thinking of A Few Good Men because Rob Reiner did A Few Good Men also, and Aaron Sorkin, I believe, wrote that screenplay. But it dawns me they would have put that on the card too, right? It would have said he would have wrote all three of those movies if that was the answer. So that's just bad deductive reasoning on my part. But Rob Reiner, I knew that one really clear because Rob Reiner is like this amazing director who has no real like auteur aspect to him. You can't watch a movie and know it's a Rob Reiner movie, but he has all kinds of movies, different genres like Princess Bride, Misery, Few Good Men. We just named a few right there. When Harry Met Sally, very disparate subgenres, very disparate genres, and yet just very capable, good director. I like Rob Reiner a lot, and I like both these movies a lot. Bummed that I didn't get the writer. That's my bad. I really should have thought about it more, but I don't want to waste your guys' time. Did you guys get these right? Did you know the director? Did you know the writer? The director, I think, is kind of an easier one, I think, for me at least. But the writer I thought was harder. So let me know what you guys guessed in the comments below. Let me know if you got it right. I hope you did. Let me know if you've got some suggestions for other mockumentaries that maybe I haven't seen. Maybe I'll do a video about one of those in the future. But until then, I'm just going to say